In his presentation, The Shepherd's Monument and the Tower of the Winds of England, researcher Court Lindell connects the Temple of the Winds on the Dashwood estate, to the Mausoleum on West Wickham Hill, and the hexagonal portion of the Roman temple at Baalbek in Lebanon, through geographic alignment and orientation. Lindell has many speculations on the esoteric and geomancy, but the core of his message is the theory that these three structures are related, and part of a larger global system of monuments whose position and orientation are determined by arcane knowledge, derived from Dr. John Dee and Sir Francis Bacon. The following video is an edited version of Lindell's presentation.
Dashwood's follies included an Arch of Apollo, Daphne House, a temple to Venus, a temple of music, and a large hexagonal mausoleum. His manor house was constructed in the Palladian style that would later be used by Thomas Jefferson to build Monticello, Poplar Forest, and the Rotunda at the University of Virginia. He even created a reproduction of the Tower of the Winds in Athens that functions just as the one at Shugborough in Athens operate. Amazingly, Dashwood's Tower of the Winds is associated with one of the most famous axis mundi on the face of the earth in history. A line created using the southeasterly orientation of the Tower of the Winds at West Wickham transects the globe directly to the center of the hexagonal feature located in the ruins of Baalbek, Lebanon. Not only does this azimuth transect to Baalbek, it matches the angle of Baalbek's orientation. Both of these structures point the way to each other. If one examines the layout of monuments on the Dashwood estate, the above spatial relationship is supported by the fact that at the north-northeast azimuth from Dashwood's Tower of the Winds, he built a large hexagonal structure in the form of a mausoleum. This mausoleum is also close to the same dimensions as the hexagon of Baalbek and resembles it in its interior design. This entire structure seems to have been built as a copy of the hexagonal structure at Baalbek. This system connects Dashwood's hexagon to Baalbek via his reproduction of the Tower of the Winds. This was likely an intentional association. Dashwood had been known to actually travel to Palmyra and Baalbek in Lebanon and Syria during one of his trips. Dashwood must have been aware of this spatial association even prior to James Athenian Stuart's trip to Greece to study architecture. It's entirely possible that the use of these types of arrangements or arrays of architecture and art were discovered in their ancient context by Dr. John Dee. Dr. Dee was a Trinity College trained navigator and geographer and taught that art to the Royal Navy during the Elizabethan era. Dr. Dee was a Queen Elizabeth I astrologer as well. His code name to the Queen was 007, and this may have inspired the use of that name by fictional character James Bond. Spotswood, who built the Powder magazine, Dashwood, the Tower of the Winds at West Wickham, Admiral Anson and Thomas Anson built the Shugborough Tower of the Winds, and Thomas Jefferson built his octagonal estate Poplar Forest with a value of this form of architecture. So this all can be traced back to Dr. John Dee and his associate Sir Francis Bacon, who we also see possibly involved in the Oak Island treasure and the azimuth I have established coming from Portus, the hexagonal port of Rome that marks the location of the Oak Island treasure. Dee was an early cartographer who actually studied under Gerhardus Mercator, who was the developer of one of the first modern truly functional map projections that displayed the entire globe on a flat piece of paper. Ancient forms of this knowledge likely did exist, but was cloistered or secret information that was kept from the public at large. All of these men's appreciation and understanding of geodesy may have come from their knowledge of the Tower of the Winds in Athens, Greece, that may have descended from the Sumerians and Egyptians and Phoenicians in turn. The possibility that Dashwood, the Ansons, Spotswood, Governor Arnold, and Jefferson were all Knights Templar may be considered when examining this evidence. Now also, what is terribly interesting about West Wickham and Sir Francis Dashwood are the many similarities to later occult figure Aleister Crowley. Now, even the monks of Sydenham Abbey had the same motto as Crowley, in "Do what thou wilt may be the whole of the law," and those words were inscribed above the doorway at Sydenham Abbey when it was being used by the so-called Hellfire Club. And also interesting are just the similarities in the men's appearance. Both are frequently displayed or depicted wearing turbans or Middle Eastern garb in representational art. And we also see later they both appreciated Ribaud's interpretation of the Abbey of Thelema. So we have these concepts appreciated by Crowley and his order, the Ordo Templi Orientis, much later, but they seem to be upholding a tradition started very similar to what Sir Francis Dashwood started to do. And we may see these kinds of groups that are not associated with Masonry. Now, they may have Masons among their members, but these groups of people are not Masons, are not associated directly with Masonry, but may have similar values that came about because some of their members were. So that's really interesting that Aleister Crowley and the concepts and a lot of the things he did may have descended from Dashwood. And it's also terribly interesting that Dashwood built this copy of Baalbek on his property. All of the literature describes it as being a copy of the Arch of Constantine in Rome, which it really does not resemble in any way, shape, or form. If one peruses images or videos of Baalbek, you will see that the hexagonal structure there at Baalbek likely was the model for his mausoleum. And also interesting on another note is a lot of people have espoused theories lately about the hidden meanings of Stanley Kubrick's film, including researcher Jay Widener, and he may be interested to note that parts of the movie A Clockwork Orange were filmed inside the hexagon at the West Wickham estate.
Lindell's presentation suggests that Dashwood had an understanding of geomancy and earth energy, and that he used this occult knowledge to develop the Dashwood estate. The developments were probably an attempt to connect his estate and the mausoleum to what is known as the Earth energy grid, which covers the entire planet. Ley lines can be loosely described as geographic alignments of places of interest, such as ancient monuments and megaliths. Ley lines are known as Heiliglinien to the Germans, fairy paths to the Irish, dragon lines to the Chinese, spirit lines to Peruvians, and song paths to the native Australians. Ley lines may delineate funerary paths, the Earth's magnetic field, astronomical alignments, or geometric alignments. The appearance of ley lines may reflect man's ability to sense and mark places on the landscape that have pronounced electrical or magnetic properties, put simply, places of earth energy that can be sensed. The researcher Alfred Watkins suggests that ley lines can be identified through ley markers. Ley markers include mounds, long barrows, cairns, cursus, dolmens, standing stones, markstones, stone circles, henges, water markers, castles, beacon hills, churches, crossroads, notches in hills, camps, hill forts, and hills. One type of ley line, known as a spirit way, spirit line, fairy path, or death road, involves funerary rites and the movement of non-physical entities or spirits. These spirit lines are supposedly invisible, and are viewed as tracks or paths for the movement of the spirits. The burial of valuable goods alongside funerary remains, the placing of remains inside stone chambers underground, and alignment of funerary structures or their inhabitants with the rising sun, all attest to the fact that funerary ley markers were not placed according to purely scientific criteria, although they may also have been added to pre-existing ley lines. The fairy paths of the Irish have folklore associated with them. There are numerous stories of houses being built over fairy lines, and then being destroyed or cursed. Stones, crosses, crossroads, bridges and churches, are all the same points on Alfred Watkins' list of ley markers. In 1911, W. Y. Evans Wentz mentions the fairy paths along which invisible elemental spirits are believed to travel across Ireland. In his book, The Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries, he referred to them as the arteries through which the Earth's magnetism circulates. West Wickham Road was built using chalk from the caves. The author believes that the real purpose of this chalk road was to lay the foundation for an artificial ley line that would connect West Wickham Hill to High Wycombe. The original chalk road may still exist today, buried beneath modern tarmac. The author also believes that there may be subterranean components to this structure, perhaps placed beneath the 161 Transit and the Pastures Cross Road. Although the original chalk road is probably long gone, West Wickham Road is now a significant geographic feature, and represents the modern physical structure of this artificial ley line. The symbolism and atmosphere along West Wickham Road would seem to identify it as the aforementioned Death Road, or a spirit way. The term, funeral line, might be more descriptive, as the properties of the line are death, remembrance of the dead, and macabre things like a former suicide hotspot, and a former funeral parlor. Through the Pastures Cross Road and Castle Hill area, this spirit way, or Death Road, connects West Wickham Hill to High Wycombe Town Centre, thus making the town centre a kind of catchment area, or centre of a larger catchment area, that could extend outwards to places like Micklefield or Cressex. In The Perception Deception, David Icke says that
the mausoleum stands on top of the cave network established for the rituals of the Satanic Hellfire Club, of Archon bloodline government minister and aristocrat, Sir Francis Dashwood, and American independence hero, Benjamin Franklin. I have been in the Hellfire Caves at Wycombe, because they are open to the public during the day as a tourist attraction. They are truly horrible, and you can just feel the entities in the unseen all around you.
Is West Wickham Road an artificial river Styx, that carries Wycombe's dead, to West Wickham Hill, via the river Styx in the caves? Are the caves a well of souls, or a Hades, where the dead languish? Are the caves a gateway to another reality?